So I'm doing a talk on Python on Windows like a boss, and I have a Mac here. So I guess that's good for a start. So let's see. First of all, who am I? Some of you might know me for my work on Python. I have been working in open source field with Python for quite a while now. I have a few open source projects. You see the URLs there. They are not relevant for this talk, but the point is I do a lot of Python. But the thing is I also do a lot of C# and F# and TypeScript and a lot of stuff. And so basically my time is split between these two words. Can you hear me? Yes. And also I do some other stuff which isn't really important for this talk. So my first question for you is, are you here because you do Windows and do you do .NET or C# or whatever language in Windows at all? Any of you? So somebody using Windows but not that much. Great. So this talk is basically about being in these two worlds. I'm lucky enough to be active in the Python community and also in the .NET community, which are, as you can imagine, quite different. And in this talk, I'm saying that if you look below the who am I, I'm a weirdo. This is how often I feel when I talk to people, because when I speak to people in the Python community and they say, you know, I spend most of my time in C#, they look at me in a strange way. And when I am in the C# and they say, you know, actually I have a lot of open source projects in Python community in Python, and they also look at me in a strange way. So I'm kind of a weirdo, but it is also a privilege because I get to know a lot of people from both worlds and also to deal with a lot of problems from both worlds, and that's really challenging and interesting. So my first suggestion for you is try something different from what you usually do, and that's usually challenging but also really interesting. So let's see what I do when I do Python, for example. So the two stacks are totally different, right? So when I do Python coding, I use Vim as a text editor. You should use Vim, by the way. Emacs is good as well. But it is basically a text editor, right? And I use iTerm. You probably know everything about these guys here. I use Bash. I use macOS, as it is called now. And yeah, the problem is that I was on Windows. I've been on Windows for 20 years. But when I started working on Python, I ended up working on Bash, basically, and Vim and stuff like that. I had to learn Vim, really relearn Vim, actually, because when I was doing C back in the way too long ago, I was using Vim. And so this is Python. But when I need to work on C#, for example, that's another story. Yes, I can do C# on Mac, on Bash. There are some plugins for Vim. You can try to do C# in Vim, but it is just a horrible experience. There is a server, HomeSharp, which is actually quite good, but it just doesn't work well for me. So you are kind of forced to use Visual Studio, which is an awesome IDE for coding for a programmer. If you do any kind of programming, Visual Studio is an awesome, amazing IDE, actually. I love it. Also because I found a fantastic plugin for extension for Visual Studio, which is Vue Vim. So if you are a Vim addict like me, you know, the thing is, when you start using Vim, you can't use anything else because your muscle memory is tied to those key bindings, so you can't do anything else. You just want to use Vim everywhere. And so there is this fantastic extension which allows me to be the Vim guy on Visual Studio. So look it up if you want to use Visual Studio. It is amazing, and it is open source, etc. And then I use the .NET framework, and not the Python stack, but the .NET stack, which is also awesome. But yes, totally different story from Python. And of course, I have to use Windows because Visual Studio only runs on Windows. Now, the story is changing. A few weeks ago, they released Visual Studio for Mac, but Visual Studio for Mac is actually really cool. I have it installed here, but it doesn't work if you want to do desktop apps, for example. It works if you want to do mobile apps or web apps, but not for the desktop, stuff like that, while I work most on desktop. So I live in a nightmare, or kind of a nightmare, because I am constantly switching. I'm using a Mac. We will see that I'm using VirtualBox. I have Windows installed here, and when I do C# coding, I'm inside a VirtualBox using Windows, and then I switch, and stuff like that. So my dream has always been I want to be able to do both worlds on the same stack. That would be awesome. But until not too long ago, there was no way to achieve that, other than installing VirtualBox inside a Linux machine or vice versa. Until a few years ago, Microsoft itself released this nice tool, which is called, it used to be called Python tool for Visual Studio. So basically the two worlds colliding. So now with this tool, we can try at least to do Python, use the Python stack on Windows in Visual Studio, which is a fantastic IDE, which also supports Vim. So amazing. And now these tools are open source. First of all, we can go and look it up. We can go on GitHub and contribute to the project. This is the official repository. And they are made with love, but what is even more relevant here is that the developers of these extensions are actually core Python developers. So we have Microsoft guys who work for Microsoft, so the evil empire, and they are actually core devs for the Python core, contributors to the Python core. One guy, Steve Dower, you might have heard about him because he's very active in the Python world. He's a core Python dev, and he also the main guy behind a Python tool for Visual Studio, which has now been rebranded as a Python workload for Visual Studio. And also, you have the option to use Visual Studio for free, which is really interesting. This is a new development. It's been around for a couple of years. So you probably know that Visual Studio is not free, but actually it is. There is an edition of Visual Studio, which is called Visual Studio Community, and it is 100% free. There are some limitations, but not really. You can use it for free if you are into education. So if you are a student or if you are a teacher, if you do coder dojos, stuff like that, clubs of coding, education in general. You can use Visual Studio Community Edition for your open source projects. And even more important, if you are an individual working in open source, but also in commercial apps, you are doing commercial apps, you sell your apps, so you are into the business professionally, you can still use Visual Studio Community Edition for free. And again, small teams, up to 5 concurrent devs can use Visual Studio Community Edition. And the keyword here is concurrent, so basically you can have a team of 10 people working on a free edition of Visual Studio. And the differences between the Community Edition and the Professional Edition are 0. So you basically have all the Visual Studio power at your fingertips for free if you want to. And this is very important for us coming from the Python world, because we are used to almost not paying anything, right? So it is good because we can have an amazing IDE for free and use our stack within for free, basically. So let's give a look at the features. First of all, when you install Visual Studio, you have the option to install the Python support. And take a look at this frame here. As you can already get an idea of the kind of support that you get for Python. When you install it, you can install and pick different Python distribution. Now, the history of Python on Windows has not been really nice. If you have been into Python for a few years, up until 5 or 6 years ago, installing Python on Windows was itself kind of a nightmare, actually. It's been better lately. It is easy now to install Python on Windows, but the nice thing is that if you have on clean machine, you install Visual Studio, and you also can install Python with it. You can pick the kind of distribution that you like, and it comes with some templates which we will see. So you don't have to do anything strange. You just install with Visual Studio. If Python is already installed, it's okay. If it is not installed, you get Python installed with Visual Studio. And very nice, Visual Studio offers you templates for most frameworks. For example, you want to start a Django project, or you want to start a Flask project, or IroPython project, and some more interesting, like there is support for machine learning, for example, you can see here. And yeah, that's very nice, because you get in 1 minute you get a Flask web application up and running within Visual Studio, and we will try it right away. You get package management, so basically pip support within Visual Studio, so you can install your packages while you're working without leaving your IDE. Of course, you probably prefer to use the command line, you can do that, but if you want, you can stay within the IDE and install the packages you need for your project. And also you get support for virtual environments, so you can create your virtual env and use it with your project. And let's just, how about we build a website right away here? Let's try that. We will see how we can support, we can have Python templates, package management, and virtual environments very, very easily within Visual Studio. Now, I'm going to use a virtual machine here, so bear with me, it won't be really fast, but the point is, can you see it? Yes. So I can go to File, New, kind of project, and as you see, we get a Python option here with a lot of templates here, machine learning, etc. Let's pick a Flask web project, and let's see what happens. Okay, this is interesting. This project requires external packages. As you can see, as we start, Visual Studio tells us, do you want to create a virtual environment for this project? Or do you want to make it yourself later on? We will go and install them ourselves. So, but we could just go here, click on install a virtual environment, and it will create the virtual environment prior to installing the Flask project itself. So when you are within the project, you already have your virtual environment sitting there for you. Okay, so as you can see, we already get some code here. On the right, we see the project itself. There is a run server.py file. If you are familiar with Flask, you probably recognize this code. It is very simple, actually. What we get here and we want to look at right now is Python environments. If we open this one, we see that we are running on Python 3.6, 64-bit, and this is the global Python. So we don't have a virtual environment. This is because we actually said we didn't want to create one. Now, this project also has a requirements file. Let's go and try to add a new virtual environment. So the option is, which Python do you want to use for your virtual environment? Oh, sorry, no. No, yeah, should be this one. So here, as you can see, we don't have the default here, the global again. We are just in a private virtual environment. We only have pip and setup tools installed. I can install from requirements, which is really nice. If you download the code, you can just install the requirements directly from within the IDE. So let's do this. Okay, I need to be an administrator to do this, which is sad because we have to elevate, and this will probably restart Visual Studio. Let's see. Or maybe not. Yes. As you can see below here, it is downloading and installing from pip. Sorry from the Python, from PyPy, all the requirements. As you can see here, that now we have Jinja and whatever, Workdog, Flask, Click, etc. So probably now we can go back to our script and try to see. One thing you want to do here with Flask is go to the project properties and say that when you run this project, you want to use the standard Python launcher. We will see why later. Let me try to launch this project now. Not really fast the first time you launch it. Okay, we get. As you can see here, it is just launching the Python interpreter. Don't worry, it isn't that slow when you use it and not outside of VirtualBox and on a real Windows machine probably. Okay, we have Flask running now, the server is ready at that port, so let's go and try to hit that port. And here we go. This is a Flask app running within Windows, within Visual Studio, in its own virtual environment. Now, because this is a Flask app, we can go and inspect it. So we have our launch script here, but also we have the views.py, which is basically how you dispatch your URLs. If you are not familiar with Flask, it is probably not. Oops, sorry. These are just the views that are called when you hit some URL on your application. So, for example, when somebody goes on the contact page, as you can see here, this function is executed and the template is rendered. And if you go to the templates folder here, we see that we have a contact HTML page. This is the actual HTML page. And we see that we are using some variables here, and these are passed from this function, title, year, and message. And here we have title and message. Okay? So we can, for example, go to the About page and say, let's look at the About page actually. Here it is very simple. We can go to the About and say that we also want maybe to use PyCon variable, maybe. Now we don't have this variable, so let's go back to our views.py page, and in our About function, we will also pass PyCon equals, oops, no. Sometimes IntelliSense gets in the way. PyCon equal PyCon 8. Okay, let me relaunch the app. So the point here is that you can basically do whatever you would do in Linux or Mac, or even on Windows using your own text editor, but within Visual Studio itself. And we will see that we have, okay, it is running again. Now if I refresh this page, I should get, okay, the output from my app. So it is now very simple to go work on my project. I can go, for example, if I want to install more packages, I just go here and, no, sorry. Oh, I need to stop the app, of course. install from PyPy. As you can see here, I have Django, and if I write, for example, Eve, just one random open source project, you see that I get the option to pip install Eve from PyPy, and also it did a research on PyPy, and it is providing me with all the matching modules, packages it found on PyPy. So I can just click on it. Let's just install Eve Auth, for example, or Eve Center. Oh my God, how many packages! So I am not going to do that. But and another thing is, look up here. You can switch the interpreter you want to use on your project. If you need to do some testing on a different version of Python, you just switch the interpreter and you keep going. Okay? So let's go back to the slides. IntelliSense, of course. Now that we have Visual Studio, we can do whatever we want to do. Let's go back to the launch script. Here we have app.run. Now, app is a Flask object. If I should get IntelliSense. Let me try. Oh, it doesn't work. Don't know why. For some reason, sorry. I don't get IntelliSense right now, but it works. You saw before when I was writing that it filled with another word. So probably I stopped it, and I don't want to mess it now. But you get IntelliSense support, so you can basically get autocomplete for you, and if you do some mistakes, you get the errors into the IDE so you can fix it. And you also get unit test support. This is really nice because you can go to your project. All the stuff you usually do with the unit test, you can do here very simply. We can go to our project and say, you know what, I want to add a new item, and I want to add a Python unit test. We get a test1.py, which of course we can rename with a test already. And if we open the text explorer within Visual Studio, let's see. We can go here and say, oh, let me just try to, I'll say self. You see here IntelliSense, now it is working. Now, the reason why it isn't working, or kind of working, is because since Python is a dynamic language, when you install a new package, what it does behind the scenes is going and scan your packages that you already installed, so it can provide you the IntelliSense for the packages itself. So it takes a while, the first time you install something, but everything is cached, so the next time it will be much faster. Assert equal port 555, for example. This probably makes more sense. And let's go back to the script and move this code outside of the if, otherwise we don't get. As you can see, I'm using Vim here. You can't see, but you probably can figure it out because I'm moving code without using the mouse. This is usually means that I'm using Vim. Otherwise, you are forced to use the mouse to move stuff around. Vim key bindings, actually. Okay. Let's see if it picks the test up. Doesn't look like there is something not going too well here. Yeah, in fact, the import here unable to resolve unit tests. It looks like we aren't into the virtual environment, but we should be actually. This is probably because I didn't run as an administrator, and remember, it gave me an error because it wanted me to run as an administrator, and I didn't do that, so probably that's the reason. Too bad. I wanted to show you this feature because it is really nice. Oh, and by the way, you get the Python REPL within Visual Studio. As you can see here, we have our Python. Again, we can switch from one Python to another. In this case, we can ask to print this, for example. And there is also support for IPython, if you fancy that, which is super nice, by the way. So you can, for example, have a plotting and stuff like that directly within the REPL. That's really, really nice as well. If I switch to Python 2.7, switch this tab. Oh, still works. I don't know, there is something weird going on here. Now I don't want to. But you get the point. And debugging. Let's see if this works, because this is one of the nice features of Visual Studio, besides testing, is interactive debugging. It is really powerful. You can set breakpoint, for example, like here if I click on. Now, if you any of you using PyCharm, for example, okay, so if you are familiar with PyCharm, this is very similar to what PyCharm offers. You can do interactive debugging, set breakpoints, do unit testing, same stuff you do in PyCharm. So if you are familiar with that, probably it is very similar. You can pick between. Actually, I use PyCharm a lot as well. So when I came to Visual Studio, it was really interesting because all the features I like in PyCharm, I add them here, but here it is the same environment in which also I do C#. So I just switch from one project to another. If I go back to the start page, here you see that in the recent project I've been working on, you see this one is a C# project. This one is a MVC, SPNet MVC project. And then we have a Flask project here. And we will see that this is another Python project. So I can switch from one language to another within the same environment. This is basically the point of this Word Talk. So let me try to launch the app again. Right, you see that the execution has halted. We are here at this breakpoint. Now, if I go down here to the locals window, you see a lot of stuff going on. And these are actually the contents of the current object. Now we are inspecting the app object, and we see all the values of the properties of this object. And not only that project, that object, app. Now, if I explode app, I get all the properties for that object live, but also, for example, the host and port values from here. And if I go with the mouse over these values, I get an inspector, and I get to inspect the values. Again, sorry about that. I don't have my trusty mouse with me. Right? So this is very nice. And by the way, you can go and set a condition for your breakpoint. For example, I only just stop when, sorry, I don't know, port is different from 5555, and the breakpoint would only stop the execution when the condition is met. So you have a lot of power and control on inspection of what is going on with your code as it is running, which is very similar to what you would do with debuggers in the Python world, which again you can use PDB, etc. But the nice thing is that you have everything within your IDE. And then there is support for source control within the IDE as well. So you can use Git, you can switch branches, you can clone and push new commits to your remote repository. and you can import code from your from existing code. Now, in the example, in this demo, we just created a new project, but of course, what you probably want to do is import code that comes from an external repository or legacy code or whatever it is. So let's try this. I have this game. Let me see here. This is a small game we built with my girl when she was 9. It is a guess the number game. It is very simple. Just as you can see, one module. Let's try and clone it locally and import it in Visual Studio. If we have time, we should have time. Let me try that. Let's clone this guy, copy, go back to the virtual machine, clear, git clone. Hopefully the Wi-Fi is working. City gas, as you see, we have our code. Let's go here, let's close everything. And yeah. When you start a new project in Python, you can choose to import from existing code. If you do this, you get a wizard that will help you importing the code. You can just go and open the file actually, but let's do the wizard so you get the pointer and the features it gives you. So where is this code? Let's go pick it up. Should be in code. Guess, you just pick the folder. Yeah, there are some options. And so it asks, what is the starting? In this case, we just have one module. So this question is kind of stupid. But if you have a larger project, you want to tell the IDE which one is the starting module for when you launch the application. And then, do you want to create a virtual environment again for this project? Let's just finish. And here we are. We have our gas process. Now, when you import code within the Visual Studio environment, like in PyCharm, for the guys using PyCharm, you have a project file. So now what it did is create a gas. If we go back here, we will see that there is a new file. Where is it? Gas PI project. This is the project file from Visual Studio, and it also built a solution file. So we actually save, and it is asking what is the name of the solution. Let's just save. All right. So now if we go here, we have the code we just downloaded from GitHub, and probably we can run it. So what is your name? Guess a number. Now, since we are coders, what number should I put here? A number between 1 and 20. 10 or 11. Good. So guess is too high. Next one. You guys are too smart. And too low. So 7. 7? Too high. Yeah. So we won within 5 moves. Nice. This is by Julia, by the way. So we just imported the new code, we launched it, we might go and inspect. You see here, down here in the right, there is this master. This is the branch actually. I can go and view the history of the repository. I can go to a commit and see the changes. This is a readme, and this is the diff from that single commit. So if we want to look at other commits, we can do that. We can create new branches. New branch here. We can do a lot of stuff. And if we go here, we can do a new commit. Let's try to, let me go back to the code. So solution. Oh. So it detected that the end of the line charters are not window style, and so it asked if I wanted to fix that. You probably don't want to fix that because the guys using Linux then will complain that we changed the encoding, but anyway, I just did. So, hello Python. Now, if we go back to, let me save. And going back to the changes. You see that there are 4 changes because we added a new file, etc. Hello Python. And commit. So we have our commit ready. We could go and sync it upstream. Since we clone, it knows that we have a remote repository. I can just go and sync. I'm not going to do that right now because it isn't important to us, but you get the point. Okay? So you get Git support within Visual Studio. This has nothing to do with Python, actually. You can do the same thing with F#, C#, or whatever it is. But then I think that since it is within Visual Studio, you get all this feature for Python as well. You get the Python shell, IPython support. And yes, so basically, my 2 words, thanks to the Visual Studio extension for Python or Python workload for Visual Studio are now colliding. So it is not yet perfect. I mean, to be honest with you, I still do a lot of Vim bashing and coding in macOS, but this is mostly because I'm so used to that environment now that going back to Visual Studio and doing Python within Visual Studio, it is not immediate for me. But the option is there. It is super nice. It is very powerful. It is becoming more and more powerful week after week. If you go to GitHub and see on the Python tool for Visual Studio repository, you will see that there are updates and new releases almost every week. So it is very alive as a project. You can contribute if you want to. And here are a few places to start at, to look at if you want to start with this. So you can go to the homepage of Visual Studio. You can go at the GitHub repo. There is a fantastic documentation online, and Steve Dower himself recorded some videos, and they are on YouTube. You might go there and you see basically what I showed you, and even more advanced features like doing advanced unit testing and stuff like that with Python within Visual Studio. So I'm going to upload these slides, and you can get. But frankly, if you just go on Google and Google Visual Studio and Python, you get all these links probably in the first results, but you can use my slide as well. And yes, that's it. Thank you for your time. If you want to send feedback or get in touch anyway, here are a few references, links, and my Twitter account. I'm very active on Twitter, so hit me up if you want to. Andrea?
Just a question. I was wondering if you have tried also the Ubuntu stack on Windows 10. And if yes, if you encounter any problem,
You mean the Ubuntu within Bash? The Bash from, yes, I did, and it is awesome. Actually, I have it here. This icon here, as you can see now, this is kind of magic. We are looking at Bash, Ubuntu Bash within Windows, and this is native Ubuntu. So here I have ls. Now, don't mind the colors, they are horrible. And we can do everything we would do within Bash in Ubuntu, we can do it here. Actually, I have a demo about that, but I'm not ready now to show you. But it is very nice because if you go and use Ubuntu here, for example, you can see up there, it is telling me that there are updates. And so basically everything that works in Ubuntu works here. And the reason is that this is actually Ubuntu running within Windows. And so and as you saw here, I'm using the old style Git. When you want to use Git on Windows, you end up installing this thing, which is Git for Windows, which is basically an emulator of Bash. But I could go and do the same thing here. If I go cd gas ls git remote.
Can you see all the Windows folder in that space?
Yes, you can. Actually, I'm already, if you look at the path, yes, I am already on C here. So you get the file system from Windows. You can browse it, you can move files, you can do whatever you want within Windows from Ubuntu, which is kind of weird, but it is really nice because at this point you get, and by the way, most features like, for example, SSH or whatever you used to do within Bash in Ubuntu, you can use in Windows. So it is kind of like having both Ubuntu and Windows merged together, and you can use what you need. For example, I could use Vim here, and not need. I don't need Mac anymore, probably. And this is actually one thing I'm considering for the next iteration of my computer. At this point, I could probably go back to a notebook, a cheap notebook with Windows, and I also get Ubuntu for free. And then I have the option to use Vim or Visual Studio, but always within Windows. And performance-wise, that's excellent because, as you saw, using coding C# or Python within a VirtualBox machine works, yes, but it isn't really optimal.
Unfortunately, we have no more time.
Sorry.
So for any more questions, you should address the speaker individually. Thank you very much, Nicola.
Thank you.